This clip has been taken from the PPC Podcast, Episode 3. Subscribe now.
What I'm trying to do is get you guys involved in our conversations, right? Obviously, we've just started this podcast, so I'm only getting a few comments here and there. However, there was a short, I should say, on YouTube that I put up. Obviously, it's going to be you talking about mortgages, right?
Yeah.
And a comment came back. It said, "Do not borrow. Mortgage literally means death pledge." This is probably the best comment I've got so far.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know what? Let me pull that out and bring it in today.
Yeah.
Now, if we were to break down the word mortgage,
Yeah.
he's actually not wrong
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Okay. Right. If you look at the most wealthy people in society, right? They borrow heavily, or they buy things with things that aren't real. So,
Yeah.
for example, I will allocate my share of stocks towards buying that asset. Look at Man United. Look at Twitter with Elon Musk. Look how they acquired wealth. They've done it through, well, I've got shares, I'm going to put those up. They're not real, they're not tangible, but they can't be taxed. So a mortgage, you don't get taxed on debt, right?
Yeah.
So it could, while you're looking at it from a short point of view of, right, well, if I borrow 100,000 at 4% and I do it for a long time, then I look at the amount of interest I've paid and go, oh my God. But if I've used nothing but cash to buy it, and then I've got this asset, taxman's going, I'll have some of that, thanks.
Yeah,
and they'll
yeah.
tax it. And the tax is sometimes a heavier burden than what you would have paid in interest, right? So the word mortgage is just unfortunate that the way that it's named, but it's still borrowing at the end of the day. And sometimes it's a case of, can I achieve the aim through borrowing? Or can I do it with, say, now if you're in a fortunate enough position that you can buy, and you could just go, right, well, I'm going to buy that house for £200,000,
Yeah.
and I've got the cash to do it. Now, that's not true for most of us. So we'll have to go, well, how am I going to, my only alternative then is to rent, but I've got nothing at the end of it. And sometimes that can be favourable, but I would suggest in more cases than not, if you take generational wealth, for example. So, for instance, if I start off and I have nothing, I buy a house, and then by the time I get old and die, I sell it, my family inherit it, and now they've got an asset to start with. And from that, now they've got money because of assets that trickle down through my children's children, so I can educate them better, I can invest in them more, I can provide for them more. But I've had to do that, me, number one, starting that with having to take a mortgage out, because the only way I could get on the property land is the only way I could acquire an asset. So I understand that some people want to stick the money under the bed because they don't want to save it, they don't want them to get their interest, but then it gets taken out by inflation. You've got
Sure.
so if borrowing ultimately achieves the aim, and when you look at all the variables and you think to yourself, right, if I buy that for 200,000, and then house prices go up as they have done, if we look from 1990 to now,
Yeah.
and we go, right, well, if my granddad bought that house and now it's worth this much and they sell it, yes, if I look at how much I could get for £100,000 then, or what the value of £100,000 was back in 1990, and what does £100,000 get me now? Obviously, I know that's changed, but did I even have £100,000 in 1990? But I have it now.
To a degree,
So does it obtain an objective for you? Does it get what you want? Now, obviously, there is a line and a balance to it where you don't want to keep borrowing, because if you're constantly borrowing up and beyond your means, that's when it's going to suffocate you. But if you use it wisely and smartly, and you live within your means of what you're borrowing, then it's always going to serve you right. Just use it as a tool, like anything else. Use it smartly.
That's it.
And you're all good. So I don't necessarily go to the extreme of it being the death tax, but it's a means to an end, and if it achieves your means and you use it properly, like anything, You know, I'm not going to be a cook and there's a knife I need to use, but then hold it with the wrong end and go, oh, why is it hurting
me.
you?
Yeah.
You've got to be more sensible with how you work it.
Definitely. I'm happy you cleared that up, because it's just for people to kind of understand. I guess, like you say, it's how you use it.
Yeah.
You could use it and it could be a death pledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
100%.
If you overextend.
It's there for it. Yeah.
And the amount of times I get people that ask me to... It's like tax. Tax is a big one. So people despise paying tax. And I don't think there's anybody who loves paying tax. For that,
Yeah.
But especially when we talk about the roads and nurses and everything else earlier. But for
I
example...
can think of a few people anyway. Yeah.
I have people that won't pay tax that I've spoke with on their mortgages and things like that, because they don't want to pay tax and they get obsessed with not paying tax. But they don't understand why they're not paying tax. They just think, well, I don't want to pay 4, 5, 10 grand in tax. But what they're failing to see, if they actually pay the tax, so if they've earned 100 grand and they go, right, that's a hefty bill, I don't really want to pay it. But now all of a sudden I can get finance to buy this, acquire that, get this job, get that job. I now look so much more affluent, productive. I can obtain more finance. That now enables me to grow this business, to acquire this, buy that house, do these things. It opens so many doors. And I'm not saying go out and pay loads and loads of tax, pay the appropriate amount of tax and use it properly, and then see how many more doors open.
I think when we're coming from certain societies and certain places, we can sort of look at this tax thing and be like, nah, I don't want to pay tax. Why am I going to give them my money? Look what they're doing with it. This, and that. But even me growing up, I've had that in my mind. But I think as I've met the likes of yourself, other people who are investors like Mark Smith, when he was talking that time when we did the event, different people that I've been speaking to, and now I'm understanding it a lot better.
Yeah.
And it makes more sense in that respect. Like you say, you can be more productive. There's more potential for you to go out and do more after that. But when you're coming from certain places, you can kind of be closed-minded to that.